Here we are in another episode of Disney trying to kiss the feet of Chinese people. Okay, this is getting a little bit too old. I already told you that, and how many times do I have to tell everybody that it's not because I am against, well, China specifically, but it's mostly about the business practices of Disney and China and all these things. I mean, I want to tell Disney to, well, you can't please almost everybody, so while you're concentrated on a country that you don't practically kind of belong. You're an American company. Let the Chinese have their own stuff. I mean, be amazed by it because I already have my piece about my thoughts about it. And if you don't believe me about it, I do want to tell you that a little bit of kind of like a bad news that I received 2 weeks ago is that the PlayStation Store they decided to stop stop selling or lending movies, so much that I was like, my God, how am I gonna do with my Halloween special? Because that was kind of like the main source where I technically get movies that are even that kind of slip out of my radar. Sometimes I really like to go through with it and have the list of horror movies in my PlayStation Store, but not anymore. So much that this is why I don't know if I have it here just in case. But the thing is that because of that, oh, there it is. Because of what they did, I decided to spend kind of like whole 4 days just browsing every single horror movie that there was on the PlayStation Store before they finally ceased to show all these movies. And I made this giant list. Look how gigantic this list of movies that I still want to watch. And some of the more rares that there is and all these things. So basically now I'm ready for years if I want to make kind of like my Halloween stuff. But what does it have to do with the Chinese movies? Well, because there is kind of like this Chinese movie that I did found while searching from it. And it's kind of like this about this kind of this ghost cat. Looking at it, it looks fantastic. It looks so fantastic that I might not gonna watch it this year, but it feels like I'm gonna do it. I wanna watch it. Okay, that's enough kind of like a rambling out of me about this. When I'm supposed to be to talk to you about the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that came out right now, which is again Disney trying to appease with the Chinese audience, which is none other than Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which ironically enough, for a movie that wanted to appease to the Chinese market, specifically by showing them that they can pick a hero that isn't technically well known for the most part. Is one of those obscure Marvel heroes that many people don't technically are not it kind of slip over on the radar, even myself. And then of course they just wanted to amplify its kind of like its importance. They wanted to show that we can do every single cultural generation of superheroes and everything, which again is kind of like a novel thing, but some people they just kind of take it kind of like in the wrong thing. So much that up to this date, I think that ironically China is not even allowing this movie to be to be shown in China, is which is kind of like weird. I would say it's kind of weird. It's almost like being here and they said, okay, we're gonna make a movie made for Americans, and then United States say, no, we're gonna ban this movie. Kind of weird, I would say. So, but honestly, I still had a little bit of high expectations because the trailer looks fine. It looks good. Honestly, I thought that I was actually hoping that this movie was gonna be as fun as compared to Black Widow. Black Widow, I was a huge disappointment from this year. So Shang-Chi looked a little kind of like fun. It had kind of like the martial arts stuff, the imagery, some of the cool stuff that a lot of those Chinese media has. And I've seen some. Some are good, some are okay, some. Yeah, but so. And honestly, also, I was kind of like very curious to see how they're gonna handle kind of like this obscure character. Considering that they did try with Guardians of the Galaxy and it became successful to the point that Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe of them all. And I went there. There was obviously kind of like this big giant audience, and the audience. Almost in a lot of the moments of the movie, they kind of buy it. They were having fun. It was almost like going back to where this in the times this concept was fresh, and seeing all this audience having so much fun. They were kind of like laughing. They were applauding even in the moments that they shouldn't do. They were like, whoa, or something like that. That they even applauded when the movie ended. So, that means that I enjoy the movie? I gotta say, guys, it's kind of complicated. I like this movie better than Black Widow, no doubt about it. I had fun. It had some good moments. It's really good. It's actually good in it as it is. But critics and common audiences, you're gonna expect a lot of overhype on this film. They're gonna overhype this film, saying that it's kind of like one of the greatest movies, or like this New York Times post that I saw after I watched the movie, that it breaks the stereotypes, and that few words bother me a lot, because while granted that this movie is good for what it is, it doesn't break stereotypes. It's not the greatest film ever. It's not even one of the greatest Marvel Cinematic movies there is. Because when you trying to, I'm not trying to be a snob. I'm not trying to be the pretentious woman from Candyman. I'm trying to put a little bit my feet on the ground and trying to see kind of like both sides. And of course that there's gonna be a little bit of kind of like my taste. And at the end of the day, we got that it's a movie that is well done, it's good for what it is fun, it has some good qualities on characters, some good writing, but unfortunately, it's not enough to tell that this was great, because there are some other elements that basically ruins my respects that I have with this movie. Well, no, maybe respect is kind of like the poor choice of words. It ruins kind of like my expectations of the movie. Unfortunately, some expectations are from some of the worst things that from the past. So anyway, we're going with Shang-Chi. So let's see what his excuse for not showing up when Thanos eliminated the half of the population of universal population. Well, his excuse is that he didn't get his powers, whatever. But basically, the movie mostly centers on his origins, in which it's kind of hard to explain. It's I'll try to explain the synopsis, at least, about the story. It's about this guy, of course, with the title character, Shang-Chi. He's played by, what was the name of the character? Sim Liu. He's kind of like this overall nice guy who he works as a valet on a hotel. He has his girlfriend played by Aquafina. And then of course, after he gets attacked by an assassin who wanted to steal a jade pendant that he had on that is kind of like a memento from his deceased mother, he begins to realize, oh my God, they're following me, but they're also gonna follow my sister who also lives in China, so I have to go there to get to her. And he and his girlfriend tag along, and little that they know is that they get entangled with a plan from his kind of like this imperialistic father, played by Tony Chi Long. I am sorry if I'm not very good on pronouncing Chinese names. But basically, they get entangled on his plan. Tony Chai Wan Long. He has this magical rings that gives him the kind of like big strength, and basically that's the best way I can describe kind of like the setup of the story. Usually, Marvel Cinematic Universe are always kind of like a challenge for me to give it kind of like a big explanation, because as much as you want to give out a synopsis of the story, it always goes somewhere else sometimes. Sometimes you get it as simple as it is, and sometimes it's not. And as far as the story goes, I'll say that it's the basic origin story of a hero that you get. In this case, we got mind me, again, this is not exactly being criticizing the movie harshly at this moment, because because honestly, how else can you make an origin film? An origin film, all we have to have is it has one point or one goal, and that is how this character comes to be. You can't make kind of like saying an origin story, say this is how this character is gonna end, because then what would be the point of being an origin story? So, but let's look at some of the things that this movie does that I feel appreciative. I like that the movie basically tells the story of how our character Shang-Chi where he comes from, how he comes in terms with, that he was he and his sister grew up with a nice mother that comes from this fantasy Chinese films. Great in martial arts, very elegant, and full of slow motion, which I'll get to it when in due time. And then and then when the mother dies, he kind of becomes the father's favorite. So they train him very hard so he can become an assassin. He doesn't want to become an assassin, and then he moves out to California. He becomes friends or slash girlfriend with Aquafina, and of course then the path comes to haunt him. I've seen these kind of stories, but as long as it's told well, I'm into it, and that part does work. At least kind of like in these moments, because later they get involved, kind of like the father conspiracy that he wants to find ways to revive the mother, and then they go apparently into yokai, Chinese yokai world. No, I'm serious. And now I'll go with the acting. The acting, this is where I have kind of like this half notion. And I'll get to that just in case. Let's talk a little bit individual about the actors and a little bit of the characters. Like I already said, Sim Liu as Shang-Chi. He does really good. He is charismatic. He is very charismatic. And you can tell that a lot of the choreography and some of the lines that they wanted to give, and they wanted to make him kind of like this marble, watered-down version of Jackie Chan. But as much as he tries, I don't think that he can go to the level of Jackie Chan. And I'm a big fan of Jackie Chan in order to tell who can do that, who can be like that or not. But he tries. It's not a bad role, but sometimes I feel like I think that they should make him a little bit more upstart, or a little bit more perky on his personality. But either way, he felt kind of like still standard. But I don't blame him. I'm blaming how they write the character. But still, as a character, he does. I was invested in at least as a character, in which of course he was a child. He loved his mother, but then a tragedy happened, and then he had to. The father gets high expectation of him, so much that he gets trained as to become an assassin, and boy, that he goes through really hard, kind of like harsh. And when I mean harsh, I mean kind of like, I wouldn't say anime harsh, but kind of a little bit close to that. There was kind of like a moment in which it kind of reminded me of Kill Bill, and as much as people love the kind of like the Master Sensei version, I don't remember the name of the guy, but the bearded guy from Kill Bill 2. Personally, I disliked that master. He's actually one of the. I found him kind of like the most abusive of senseis in cinema history. I really despise that guy. But still, I believe the journey that Shang-Chi had. In which he has to cope up with himself, his relationship with his father, with the relationship with his sister, and coping up, with all the sentimentalities that he had to go through. Then we got, of course, Tony Shalhoub, who basically, according to what I heard from the backstory, as far as the limited things that I know about Marvel, he was supposed to be the Mandarin. But how they're gonna do it when they fuck it up in Iron Man 3? Mandarin is always known as being one of the biggest villains for Iron Man. But how they're gonna do it? Tony Stark is dead. So, and they fuck it up in Iron Man 3. And I still hate Iron Man 3 for that reason. And you can tell that, they wanted to, it's almost like America trying to apologize for creating, for the Fu Manchu stereotyping, because yeah, the Mandarin is inspired by Fu Manchu. But you know what? I think that I prefer the Fu Manchu because at least a Fu Manchu design, while stereotypical and for many people might find it offensive, but at least it's memorable. So you dropped the balls on that one. But here's the thing: no matter how much you want to say about how they fuck up the Mandarin, and this character, well, it doesn't look like the Mandarin. I'm gonna say that the actor does an excellent job. He's probably the best actor in the whole movie. How can I explain? He's both kind of like threatening because he has those magic rings that flies around. I like those magic rings. Looks awesome. Although for some reason it kind of remind me of the ring blaster that Sonya Blade has in the video game. You know, that when she goes shh, something like that. So yeah, basically again, those are the powers of the Mandarin. So we could consider him kind of like the Mandarin 2.0. They didn't never refer him as the Mandarin. He's just technically the father figure. They wanted to make him sympathetic, and for the sake of the storytelling, it's fine. It's fine because he doesn't do anything kind of like grandiose, despicable. The only thing that you might find that he is kind of like a big threat is that he basically kind of created a Chinese Hydra. That's the best way I can describe it, because it kind of looks like an assassin guild with real expert martial artists, and sometimes they even hire people from another country, like this Russian guy with a sword in his right hand. That's pretty much I have to say about this guy. Another character, there's the sister. I don't remember the name of the character. This character, I kind of like how they wanted to incorporate it. Although they kind of also a little bit smell of the usual agenda that Disney nowadays wants to sneak in. But considering that it's China, well, I kind of understand. This was a character that she was Shang-Chi's sister. That they get separated due to kind of like circumstances that I'm not gonna go with it, because on the ten ring guild, they only bother to train men, and there was kind of like a favoritism with the father and son. She's like, no, I wanted to do that, so she trains for herself because, well, I'll let you come with your conclusion. And she comes off kind of like a nice character, but during the whole movie, every time they mention kind of like the brother and sister relationship, I always come with one giant question. And the giant question is, how they frick they can be siblings. And I'm not saying because it's impossible, because obviously, but we're talking about Chinese culture. As far as I know, or probably correct me if I'm wrong, but the timeline say that they were born kind of like in between 1991 or kind of like 2000 or something like that, according to the flashbacks. But during that time, and still is, China has this strict political rule in which no family can have more than 2 children. that was something that has been done to control the overpopulation of the country. So having a brother and a sister that are Chinese, it kind of makes me a little bit puzzled. In which, how did they get away with that? How did they get away with having two brother and sister Chinese that are Chinese? I mean, please tell me. Maybe you could have in the movie you could have told me that they decided to defy the Chinese government. So they say, frick your politics. I'm gonna have two children. Or they might have been born with different families in different countries, or they give birth in different country, and so technically it was kind of like too late. At least tell me that. Tell me that, because I want to know. I know that is a bit unnecessary for the sake of the movie, but please explain me that. But now I also have to say one of the bad things that I hated from this movie. And one thing that I hate about this movie is Aquafina. I hated Aquafina. I haven't seen her in many movies. The last time I saw her was in Raya and the Last Airbender. Raya and the Last Dragon. And honestly, I thought, the more I think about it, is that Aquafina, she has an ugly voice. But this is more kind of like a personal taste. Her voice is not pleasant, it's just a little bit too raspy. I find her too raspy, and in this movie, God, she was so annoying. And people will say that they buy the chemistry between Shang-Chi and this character, Katie, I think you would call. I didn't buy it. Their chemistry, it felt a little bit forced. They didn't have chemistry on the slightest, and honestly, this character could have been removed, and nothing could have made kind of like a big impact. They just added Aquafina because they wanted kind of like this hipster comedian out of it. I never seen about this, and boy, most of the laughs and the jokes that she wanted. Well, some people kind of laugh. I respect that, but in my eyes, her jokes were really, really lame, and I don't know if it's the acting or the script that they gave her, but a lot of them is really, really, really cringy, and I was like, Aquafina, please, shut the freak up. Sorry. That character kind of she wasn't even that likable. She was kind of like these comic reliefs that you don't want to hang out. And the best way I can describe kind of like the relationship between her and Shang-Chi is that it reminded me of that Adventure Time episode where Tree Trunks and the pig began dating, and they began to show up in everywhere kissing, and everyone surrounding her like, oh God, get a room. It's so awkward, something like that. And that's how I felt. That's how I felt about Aquafina. And even kind of like in the second and third act, they managed to tone down some of her acting, and her comic relief role, but it's almost like the comic relief part, it got exchanged for, basically something not that interesting or something like that. She kind of becomes an archer in a manner of a day, kind of like that. That's it. I'm sorry. And I swear that there was a moment in which he really does some bad acting, in which every time when she wanted to kind of throw up her acting, she was like, I'm sorry to go like that. It was like, oh, come on, why I'm gonna do something like that? I was like, I see her kind of like cringing in her mouth, but maybe it's like her trying to, you know, making a kind of like a face. I'm not gonna criticize harshly on Aquafina at the moment because I haven't seen enough movies, but two movies that I wasn't too keen on her. It doesn't. I don't see. I don't see it too favorably in my eyes to her. And speaking of comic relief, I'm sorry. I needed a little bit of time to think about it. I'm still going with the acting. Because this moment, I can't believe that the audience bought it. Because I can't believe it. This almost ruins the entire movie. Not just Aquafina. Aquafina almost ruins the movie for me. But at least they toned her down, at least in the second half of the movie. But you know what's worse than one unfunny comic relief character that almost feels like it's just there for just be there? How about two comic reliefs that are unfunny, but people think that it's funny? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I don't care if I spoil it because I have to spoil because of that. Remember that I said that Iron Man 3 is the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe movie I have seen? I still add it. But what are some of the I remember telling you that some of the worst aspects of Iron Man 3 is that they fuck up with the Mandarin, and because there's this guy. And both are in the same spectrum of why Iron Man 3 suck. And this is and I can't believe it that they decided to go to Iron Man 3 and bring the worst thing that made this movie hateful. That's right! They brought Ben Kingsley back as this phony Mandarin. When he was there, I even was struggling to not bother the audience because the audience was having fun, and I didn't want it to be the party pooper in the audience. And I was like, fuck no, 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 no. They brought this, you know, the so-called Mandarin. They brought that Ben Kingsley becoming this Liverpool actor and still as pathetic as ever. And apparently they wanted to tone him down because they wanted to make him kind of like a little bit kind of like remorseful, but still kind of like a comic relief. But no! No! He's still as pathetic as ever! God damn it! Why didn't you brought him back? No! No! They couldn't let him die. Well, he didn't die, but at least let him forgotten. What? You wanted China to say, okay, here we got Ben Kingsley so he can apologize for almost being the Mandarin? Why couldn't they just let it go? I wanted to have, you know, we got this guy who is supposed to be the Mandarin, and nothing can be said and said. Let's move on. Let's try to forget that Ben Kingsley existed. Well, not Ben Kingsley. Let's forget that Iron Man 3 happened. No! They decided to bring him back. They brought back Ben Kingsley, phony Mandarin. Fucking hell. Fucking hell. And he was used kind of... And you know what? He's also being used because he basically is having as a pet this creature that kind of looks like what will happen if you cut Chewbacca's ass and then suddenly it sprout out legs and wings. Kind of like many people kind of feel it like it's kind of like a furry turkey, which, okay, kind of cute enough, fantastic enough, but honestly, the more I think about it, it kind of looked like a butt. It kind of looked like a walking butt. No offense, but honestly, this is this creature that they wanted to make it for, to sell toys or something like that, because it doesn't technically was needed for the movie. They just wanted something that is kind of cute. Almost funnily enough, because it looks like a butt, it brings me kind of like more question on my head. I always have this question when it's about headless creatures, in which is, how does this thing eat? Never mind. No, I'm not gonna go there. But anyway, they brought back the worst aspect. Not only I had to deal with Aquafina, I had to deal with Ben Kingsley's phony Mandarin. So these two, I do consider that as the worst parts of the movie. Time to talk to you about cinematography. Like I said before, after I finished the movie, I was mesmerized by this New York Post, in which it says that this movie breaks stereotypes. And my answer was, is it? Because it didn't. It didn't break any stereotypes. Honestly, this movie is still a stereotype of a Marvel Cinematic Universe combined with a stereotype of a Chinese movie. One of those fantasy Chinese movies. And let me tell you something that I'm a little bit sick. Is that many people always say that you should never stereotype people because it's very offensive, you're technically insulting them. But ask yourself, where do stereotypes come from? And think that not every stereotype means that you're offending them, because there are also stereotypes of some of the positive qualities of people. For example, people say in stereotypes that, let's say, Jewish people are good with economy or something like that. Why is that? And honestly, being good in economy is a good trait. Or Japanese is a stereotype because they're more tech savvy and intelligent. But honestly, if I put it kind of in a certain perspective, in my eyes, I will say that stereotype is basically the recollection of humanity's view of one community to another and how they interpret it in a general scale. It's not saying that, for example, every people are like that, because there is also the sense of individuality. But even with even if we can consider that every single people is an individual, there's still a range of characteristics that, as a group, makes them kind of like different or unique in one way or another. So, could you say that, for example, that every leopard has spots means that that leopard has spots is a stereotype, or that we got the stereotype of a baboon because the baboon has a red butt So, are you offended at baboon because because every single baboon has a red butt? Not exactly. It's something that kind of like how a whole group of baboons they look like. Probably one baboon might not have a blue butt. It might not have it or something like that. Or sometimes kind of like in their behavior or something like that. This is a little bit so what I'm getting at is that it still mesmerized me that that post saying putting in the article that it breaks stereotypes, because first of all it does feel like one of those familiar origin movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there are some elements of Chinese movies that I've seen in other movies. But again, that is not exactly a bad thing, I'll say. I'll get to that, by the way, right now. Where do I start? First of all, let's talk about choreography. We know that usually Chinese culture or Japanese culture or sometimes every single culture, they're very proud of their style of martial arts or fighting or something like that. For example, making movies about Japan, if they want to concentrate on how people practice karate, for lack of better terms, because there are different styles of karate, they show in details what they do with this style. Or in China, they're talking about kung fu. So and a lot of movies show that, and they want to show kind of like the how they do these kind of martial arts. There is kind of like the scene that I actually really like. Actually, two action scenes I really like, which is scenes on the bus and a scene that involve a building. This is where you feel like some of the martial arts choreography is a little bit almost going into Jackie Chan style, although with a little bit less quirk and humor. But still, those parts I really enjoy. It looks good, but not exactly kind of like, again, impressive, because I do remember the Jackie Chan films and those were amazing. Another thing that this movie is also a little bit of a stereotype of a Chinese film is this overuse of graceful choreography and slow motion when it's about martial arts, because I've seen a lot of Chinese films in which the character kind of like goes into this style like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon or something like that, and then the wind blows, or and the camera makes kind of like the pan of the movement or something like that. It goes into slow-mo like this, or it goes kind of like graceful or something like that. So I've seen a lot of these in Chinese movies, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but you can't say that you're breaking stereotypes when you're basically being a stereotype of of Chinese movie making, as well as some of the imagery. The imagery is always kind of like a CGI fest. That it looks good, but sometimes you see a little bit of, well, this looks a little bit too CGI. Mostly when they go to the to this this magical world. I'm not gonna get too much into details, but I wish we could have seen a little bit more about this magical world, because honestly, I'm a big sucker of mythical creatures. We see phoenixes, we see longmas, we see, well, these hairy butt creatures, but they also have dragons, and you know how much I love dragons. When there's dragons, I get hype, and it looks beautiful. I'm not gonna diminish the movie like that because it's good looking. And the choreography again, it's well done. It has although it does have a little bit of the stereotype of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in which we got the hero who is kind of quirky, and they trying this awkward, try-hard humor, which doesn't help because of Aquafina and Ben Kingsley. God, these guys suck. But so yeah, it has that stereotype of a Marvel movie. So don't pretend to tell me that this movie breaks stereotypes when you're still doing other kinds of stereotypes. Whew. Oh yeah, speaking of also trying to break stereotypes, a lot of the music, I think that, I don't know if it was the projection on the movie theater that I went to, but I wish that that music could have been a little bit louder, because it has, the mandolin music that that you hear, the typical instruments when you hear about Chinese musical culture. That, and honestly, I love this kind of music. Some of them are soothing. It goes with with the ambience that they go through. It just kind of like, again, a little bit, because still this New York Post still bugs me. Maybe it's me. I'm not. Look, I'm not trying to diminish the movie. I'm not trying to be bad or saying that, oh, you don't like it, then you are a bad person or something like that. On the contrary, I probably might say that maybe my tastes are a little bit too picky, but maybe I'm gonna say, maybe my tastes are a little bit too, how can I say this? Well, a little bit too picky. I get a little bit too harsh. Let's call it tough love sometimes. Okay, now it's time for me to wrap up with kind of like a few elements that I do want to kind of address with the movie. I'm gonna try as best as possible to not spoil it, but I'm not gonna hold so much, I gotta say, so much promise, because there's some little elements that I don't think that kind of like this, my usual spoiler alert, cool handle. Although I already addressed some things. For example, I'm still a little bit confused in the term that how Shang-Chi could have a sister when the Chinese government had the kind of like this birth control in their country, so much that makes Chinese people technically impossible to get siblings unless they manage to get away with it illegally. And I already complained a little bit about on the Mandarin. I think I already told you that the creature looks good except for a few of them. Although I do want to complain a little bit also that I remember that I did mention that there's a character that apparently becomes an expert smartsman just in the span of one day. Well, that's the Aquafina character. The Aquafina character's arc, it didn't feel like it meshed up well, because here's the thing. They wanted to have that Shang-Chi and the Aquafina character. They met each other for kind of like 6 years. 6 years they've been beginning kind of like dating, even though they kind of like brushed it up. But no, I don't think that their relationship kind of work. They live with this family, and apparently, kind of like they wanted to pressure her, saying that, hey, life is short. Life is short. You gotta focus on what you're gonna do. But she's like, nah, I got my life, everything. I'm even gonna, sing karaoke all night. Despite that, you have to get a job. You have to work. She was kind of like this irresponsible character. But the movie didn't feel like it earned her arc when she she just kind of begins to tag along because, well, for kind of like this I'm gonna tag along no matter what. And then she was kind of there, and it didn't explore her enough, kind of like an arc, in order to believe that she decides to take, defend the world seriously. It just kind of just go there, and that's it. It felt like it's kind of like it went out quick. Again, I did like the relationship between Shang-Chi and the father. What else? What else I have to say about this? I've been hearing people kind of saying that, well, the first half was solid. It kind of goes downhill in the second half because it becomes the actions become a little bit too magical. While I tend to agree, I mean, it's not exactly how can I say, something that kills off the movie. I was mostly excited, and in a ways I did bought the Shang-Chi arc. I did bought his relationship with the father, with the sister. Although I kind of wish that the sister could have been a little bit more bitter. Again, the comedy really awkward. It doesn't work a lot of the times, but some of them work. But honestly, I don't know. Sorry about outside. There's this loud ass motorcycle. Okay, like I was saying. I think I don't get why people kind of begin to laugh at the lamest jokes that Aquafina and Ben Kingsley spout out. When you think about it, they are lame. They're kind of punchline forced, and still the audience laugh. And I was like, what's so funny? So many times, I kind of begin to wonder if I'm the problem, or maybe I didn't buy it, I didn't get it, or maybe, or something like that. I tried, but sometimes it makes me feel like the odd one. I'm not saying that I'm ashamed of, but it feels like it still kind of makes me question it if the problem is just me. Look, I'm not a critic. I don't consider myself like a critic. I just that I study cinematography enough, and I've seen so many movies enough to that I get kind of like this fascination to bring out my own observations, trying to be as neutral as possible, but at the same time, I didn't want it to feel like a robot and show off that I do have kind of like my particular sense of taste and if that kind of convinced you good enough, good for you. If you like it, good for you. I'm not gonna call you kind of like an idiot or something. But sometimes if we want to grow up as humans, we have to put some standards on our taste, and instead of like, oh, I'm going to watch it and something, and well, just get a laugh. Because honestly, I do that sometimes. In even the dumbest movie I have seen. For freaking sake, last year I saw a movie about a killer piñata, and that was kind of like the stupidest thing I ever seen in my life. But I had a great enjoyment out of it. So I think I talked well enough about Shang-Chi, that saying that, well, it kind of touches some notes that I question a lot. I still think that compared to Black Widow that came out months ago, this is kind of like an improvement. Unfortunately, I think a little bit of the hype of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, personally, it kind of died down because ever since Endgame. Because Endgame, it was a kind of like this big giant build-up. So what's next? We're now having these new heroes, some of them likable, some not, but it's gonna be a little bit hard to pick up. So what we're building, what's next coming? The only big thing that comes into my mind, it's Galactus. But, or probably, what was it, the Dormammu, but Dormammu was touched in the first movie, or he's gonna plan something big. But nothing cries that something really gigantic as they did for Endgame. It feels like, I think that it kind of died down. It's not that I don't like superhero movies. I actually like them. I think that it's kind of like a good time to take a break. It's almost like the zombie movies. But at the end of the day, if you ask me, I give it a mild recommendation to Shang-Chi and the 10 rings. If you're into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and you still want to kick it, you're gonna have some kind of like a good time. It's a good time. Despite my position on Disney kissing the feet of the Chinese market, I still wish them luck because I don't know, because China ironically doesn't want anything to do with it. But still, check out this movie. That I sometimes wish I don't want to recommend you, because why they had to bring him back? Seriously, why they have to bring him back?